Hello, everybody. We originally recorded this all the way back in 2021 in the lead up to Spider-Man No Way Home, but this is the first time we are releasing the video of this discussion. If you're watching this, that means you're either a member of our YouTube channel or a patron of our Patreon. Either way, thank you so much for supporting the channel. We couldn't do programming like SPIDERVERSITY without you. Enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to SPIDERVERSITY, this Patreon exclusive show, only on patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. If for some reason we've decided to release this to the public to let them know what they're missing out on Patreon, thank you for listening. Please head on over to Patreon for the rest. I am DJ Wooldridge, and with me, as always, is Sal. Sal, say hi to the kids at home.
Hi, kids. I'm Sal.
And remind them, in case, we're at this point 5 episodes deep into our third movie, but just in case they're just tuning in, where can they find you?
Yeah, just in case you wanted us to only talk about...
You're like, I'm only here for Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, I'm only here for Spider-Man 3. No, you can come check us out over at youtube.com/comicpop or other places where you find Comic Pop and us talking about comic books. We have another channel, Comic Pop Returns. We just launched a shorts channel. If you only have time for like 20 to 30 second long videos, we made those. But we're talking all about comic books, getting deep dives into your favorite trades or least favorite trades, and really asking the fun, tough questions. So check us out.
Listen, here at Only Stupid Answers, we're all about asking the questions and coming up with stupid answers. But as we talked about just briefly at the top, this is the episode where we're talking about Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, Spider-Man 3s. There's 2 of them.
Yeah, we've run out of the good Spider-Man movie. I should say good live action Spider-Man movies. Qualifier.
Yes.
Qualifier.
Yes, that you are correct, because I think there's some and across the board. Here's where we have to go cherry picking for things we like in Spider-Man movies, where it's like there's a couple of things I like about this movie, but
yeah. Well, let's be honest. Ripping into movies is more fun anyway. So now it's going to get it's more fun. And I will say right at the top, I remember very distinctly. There's a few movies that I remember distinctly walking out of being like, wait, was that bad? Like, obviously now I review movies and stuff like that, so it's a very clear distinction. Like my feelings on Ghostbusters Afterlife were immediately concrete. But when you're younger and you're just forming your opinion on movies, so I remember when I was a young kid, and just anytime my parents took me to movies was a treasure. And walking out of Batman and Robin being like, wait a second. Did that suck? Did I just for the first time see a movie that I think sucked? The other one was Force Awakens.
Oh, wow. Really? You didn't like Force Awakens?
Not Force Awakens. Excuse me.
Oh, The Last Jedi.
Phantom Menace. Phantom Menace. When I was a kid, Phantom Menace. And it was one of those, but the guy had 2 lightsabers, and I liked that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I liked the movie.
Put that at the end so you're like, wow, I think I really like that movie.
I really
and
like
then you think about it for a minute.
Yeah, but I don't think I liked anything else. And, you're a kid, you're processing it. And this is when I'm a little bit older at this point. I had to have been in college when this movie came out, and just that feeling of like, wow, that sucked. I will admit, now having had several other Spider-Man movies come out since this one, and then revisiting it, because obviously I revisited Spider-Man 1 and 2 pretty regularly. I've only revisited Spider-Man 3 more recently, and through the lens of being in the future and having seen other Spider-Man movies, I'm like, you know what? It's not great, but there have been worse Spider-Man movies.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of rumor and conjecture about this movie in particular, about whether people were making them under duress, whether there was a lot of outside interference, and outside interference would become a hallmark of Spider-Man movies from this day forward.
Yes. In a lot of ways, and we'll get into this more, I actually feel like this movie, I think people's opinions of this movie were in the right place coming after Spider-Man 2, but it is interesting now looking back how much this becomes like a bellwether for superhero movies to come. Yes. Where it's like, what if we do all the things all at once and not really worry about characterization or plot all that much? And it's like, that's just the way superhero movies are now. And it's weird how now we're just like, oh, cool. But back then we're like, boo movie.
Dude. I watched Spider-Man 3 right after seeing the No Way Home second trailer.
Yes.
And I got to be honest with you. Yes, I think during that time, it seemed like they were throwing a lot of stuff at this movie. This movie seems positively quaint.
Yes.
I was like, Peter Parker wants a staff job. Those are the stakes of Spider-Man 3.
The stakes of Spider-Man 3. Well,
will the girl he's been with for the last 10 years want to marry him?
Dude, I have questions about the timeline of Spider-Man 3. The timeline of Spider-Man's 1 and 2 are pretty distinct. They make it very clear. This one is like, when is this happening? But
there's a line in the police precinct where they say it was 2 years since the first movie. I'm like, no, it hasn't.
Yes. Bullshit. So before we do that, you mentioned the most recent Spider-Man No Way Home trailer, which is the new Spider-Man 3 we get to look forward to. And since this is a Spider-Man show, and literally, so for people listening to this, that'll have probably been out for a week. We literally just watched it. It just came out yesterday for us. So like, a lot of thoughts. And right out of the way, of course, like things I liked. Actually, the first line where Peter is like, ever since I've been bit by a spider, my life hasn't felt normal except for 1 week, and that's what I told you. It's like, oh, especially since we're watching the Raimi movies, and the Raimi movies are pretty good about this stuff. Like, more of that. Where has that kind of like character interaction been in this franchise?
Totally.
Like that. Of course, seeing Alfred Molina. The one that really got me is when you hear Willem Dafoe's Goblin voice, and it's like, Peter's gonna get fucked up. He's not ready. He's not ready for Willem Dafoe's Goblin. Like, not that Keaton's Vulture or Gyllenhaal's Mysterio were pushovers, but like, oh boy, is this Spider-Man not ready for Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin?
Well, because here's the thing, right? His villains have been outside of Thanos. He did fight Thanos.
That is he's fought a literal mad god.
But when it comes to one-on-one, he fought a thief. Mm-hmm. Like a tech thief, and then he fought like a crappy actor. Like, these are people who weren't driven by insanity or the desperate need to kill him. Mm-hmm. So he could pull his punches on these characters. He was more mad at Mysterio, and I'm not convinced he's dead, but he was still like, I'm dealing with regular people, and they have their own like complicated morality, and then there's Green Goblin. Yeah,
and as we'll talk about a little bit in this movie, as we talk about Spider-Man 3, the Goblins have Spider-Man's number. The Goblins hand Spider-Man his ass on the regular.
Totally.
That was cool. I like that. Like, it seems like Molina's his relationship in the movie is a little bit more complicated, because I do have the way they've talked about it is that he's literally yanked from the end of Spider-Man 2, and now he's in this movie, and it's like, but at the end of Spider-Man 2, he's kind of like resolved his shit. I don't know why he's fucking stuff up in this movie.
Right.
And it seems like the premise of the movie is they fuck up the spell to make people forget Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, and now it's opened a doorway, so these other villains are pouring through, and Spider-Man needs to put them back, which I guess is why he has the black magic suit.
Yes, I think that's going to be like I hit you with the magic suit, like with a spell, and you'll get sent back.
Sure.
By the way, it'll be really fun because he's getting a magic suit. He's going to have to do a special move with his hands to activate it, I'll bet. And I'll bet there's a scene where he's like, so it's going to be weird, but you're going to have to make your hand kind of do one of these. Mm-hmm. And Spider-Man's going to be like, I think I can manage.
Wait a second. Hold on. Wait, did Steve Ditko create Spider-Man and
and Doctor Strange?
And Doctor Strange.
No, it's so exciting. That's cute.
It's only surprising that The Question doesn't have that move for some reason.
Right?
Yeah. So, but then the conflict is that he knows that most of these villains die when he sends them back, and he doesn't want to kill them, which I feel like is a weird territory for the movie to go in, which again actually pertains to this movie as well, where we kind of dive into like Spider-Man's history with manslaughter, and it becomes tricky because, like, are we going to paint the previous Spider-Mans as murderers? And also, it's not like, it doesn't look like these villains are just chill dudes when they come over to this universe. They're like threatening civilians. So it's like, am I supposed to be
they're losing it,
rooting for Spider-Man not to send these guys? It just feels like it feels like a weird goal to have.
It is a weird goal, but I kind of love it because I like that Spider-Man is kind of the instrument of his own folly, and it's because of his morality. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm going to fight Doctor Strange. Yeah. I'm going to fight the Green Goblin. Like, I'm going to fight everybody because no one deserves to die. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, that's a quintessential Spider-Man hill to die on.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm all for that. That I'm more excited for than just being like, we want to jump to Sinister Six, so we're just going to pull a bunch of characters you already know and have them fight him.
And we do get in this trailer, we get, obviously we get Ock, we get just Green Goblin's voice, which I find it very interesting that we're holding off the visual, like Willem Dafoe.
Well, we don't show Willem Dafoe
we don't
necessarily.
Show Willem Dafoe. Yeah.
Well, I think they do, because there's one shot where there's a maskless Gobby, and I think it's meant to look kind of like New Goblin from Goblin 3 or from Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
But I think that's Dafoe.
I think you're right. People right now, like literally on Twitter right now, are saying that that's going to be Ned as Hobgoblin. But you look at the still, it's like, no, that's Willem Dafoe. And at first, when I first saw it, I thought it was New Goblin. I'm like, oh, why? Of all why are we the James Franco of it, the whole thing? And obviously, we're going to get into it in this movie.
Yeah.
But why? And then as people have like still grabbed it, it's like, oh. Willem Dafoe shows up in the classic Goblin suit. We acknowledge that suit kind of blows, and then it's like we just have him with the mask off because, again, as we talked about in Spider-Man 1, you can't beat Willem Dafoe's villain face. You just can't. Yeah. So why bother?
Right, his face is already a goblin. Why not just show it?
Yeah, just show it already. And I also don't know. I've heard mixed reports of whether we've got Thomas Hayden Church and Rhys Ifans back as Lizard and Sandman. My impression watching the trailer, it's like, oh, there's that ones we got the actors back for, and then the ones that are CG monsters, and then we move on.
Big time. I think definitely. I bet Rhys Ifans does the voice.
Same with Thomas Hayden Church's Sandman, which, as we will talk about in this movie, is just a lot of moaning and grunting when he's in sand mode.
Oh my god, yeah. By the end, he's lost a few grains of sand. Let's say,
a lot of moaning and screeching in the final fight of this movie that we're about to talk about. But yeah, I don't know. The nostalgic part of me, this trailer got me excited. As I've mentioned before, the Spider-Man fan in me is a little like, it's just a lot. It's a lot, and it seems kind of confusing.
Agreed. No, we didn't need this trailer. At the end of the day, this trailer did not need to exist because the hype had already existed. And yes, I think the trailer hopefully will provide stopgaps to leaks because people will be less excited or less willing to break the law to get people excited. But I heard rumors there's going to be another trailer with more stuff.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, no more trailers. Like, we get it. We're already hyped. We know everyone's in this movie.
Yeah. Well, and also at the end, we get a little bit of like, Peter's like, I can't save everybody. And MJ falls off the tower. And it's clearly an homage to Amazing Spider-Man 2. And it's one of those like, oh yeah, Andrew Garfield. I was expecting the trailer to end with Andrew Garfield swinging in and like, because it's a good redemption for that character.
Totally.
It works.
Yes. And I'm okay with that. If they do that, that's awesome for me. Because I like Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, and I love that. I actually really love that sequence in Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, I think I am of the opinion that Amazing Spider-Man 2 is better than Amazing Spider-Man 1, and totally. I think that sequence in particular is very effective. Oh, we got to say, they've changed Electro's design. Now he gets the lightning, which the homage is the mask, which is cool, but it still looks stupid. So I would have been fine
silly.
if we just kept the same design.
I'm glad they changed it because I know that Jamie Foxx wasn't happy with it. Honestly, I wasn't thrilled with it either. I admire that they went with it. I was like, you did the mask thing.
Yep.
Good for you.
Good for you. So wait, so now our 6 is Goblin, Ock, Lizard, Sandman, Electro, and some, I assume, mystery. It's villain. Tony Stark. He returns. No.
Oh, I don't know. I honestly thought it was going to be Mysterio or Vulture.
Well, again, because both those, I have mixed feelings on the Spider-Man home trilogy. The villains are great. Like Keaton's Vulture and Gyllenhaal's Mysterio are great. So in the fact that, we'll get into it when we talk about Far From Home, but it's like I don't like that they killed Mysterio because he was good. He worked. He was a good version of that character. Yeah,
I still say he didn't die. There's no way those drones shot him. He just made it look like that. It's all nonsense. He's gone.
So
maybe gone before that happened.
So maybe that's the last one that they're holding out. Or again, we've seen Keaton's Vulture in Morbius of all movies. It's like, and you couldn't get him for this,
right? But like, who wants Morbius anyway? We're good.
Well, not Morbius. Michael Keaton's Vulture. Like, if you could get Michael Keaton for Morbius, why not get Michael Keaton for No Way Home?
I agree. I agree entirely, and I would love to see that. I would love to see Michael Keaton's Vulture bumping elbows with the Green freaking Goblin. Are you kidding me?
Anyway, could be cool. We kind of got the shape of the movie, and we'll see. It's like a month away or whatever. But listen, you're coming to this show because you, like us, are trying to get ready for that movie, and clearly these movies matter. Clearly, we made the right call to brush up on these movies, and not just Spider-Man 1 and 2, because they clearly all matter to some degree.
Yeah.
God, Rhys Ifans' Lizard, we pulled him out of retirement.
I can't believe they did that. I was like, what?
Of all
Why?
the characters, and the design is the same and everything.
You changed Electro, you didn't make Lizard look more like the Lizard.
Why not? Because I think you and I are on the same page that you definitely, he might have come into the sound booth for like 30 minutes, but that's all you used Rhys Ifans for in this movie.
Odds are they're just going to have him say, poor Peter Parker, and then just attack him.
Anyway, whatever. So we're talking about Spider-Man 3, and the synopsis for Spider-Man 3 is a strange black entity from another world bonds with Peter Parker and causes inner turmoil as he contends with new villains, temptations, and revenge. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 63% critic score and an audience score of 51%, continuing the trend of having the critic score for the Raimi movies be higher than the audience score, which again, I will say is just a reminder that Rotten Tomatoes came out after these movies, and the kids that score stuff on Rotten Tomatoes, if it's older than they are, they're not into it.
Right.
And the critic consensus is, though there are more characters and plot lines, and the action sequences still dazzle, Spider-Man 3 nonetheless isn't quite as refined as the first two. Which I think
right about that.
Yeah, I think is accurate and a bit generous, but accurate.
I think it's very generous. Yeah, I was like, wow, that was really kind of them to say. Like, oh, the first two were, they were a little. Maybe the third one, their reach exceeded their grasp a little bit.
Yeah. So, of course, it's directed by Sam Raimi and written by Sam Raimi, Ivan Raimi, and Alvin Sargent, who also worked on Spider-Man 2.
Yep.
And, so this movie opens with the classic, at this point, classic Spider-Man title sequence with the CG webs and everything. Few changes. No Alex Ross paintings. Boo. They should have brought him back.
Instead, stills from the first movies. They went like, oh, it's actually cheaper if we just use the frames of animation from the movies.
Which is, it's kind of like when the Marvel logo transitioned from the comic panels to scenes from the MCU. You're like, oh, I get it.
Kills me.
But I don't like it.
Me too.
Interesting effect, though. There is kind of a mirror effect, which, of course, in the advertising of this movie with Spider-Man looking at himself in the mirror, there's some symmetry there. There's also the Venom symbiote starts invading the webs, which is cool, but then we also start getting Sandman sand with the titles, which is an early warning that this movie's going to be a bit cluttered.
That some of these things don't mesh well.
Yeah, some of these things we didn't bother trying to because that's the other thing is I feel like there is a version of this movie that works.
Yeah,
you just need to adjust stuff, and we'll get into that more later.
Right.
So after the credits, we get that way all these movies open, VO from Spider-Man, but the difference is this one's actually pretty upbeat. He's all like, I'm Spider-Man, shit's great, I'm happy. As he's swinging through the city, and I don't know about you, I was like, is that literally the same shot as Spider-Man 2?
Yes. And then they're like, yes, it is.
Yeah, it's 100%. So we see a little montage again, like in Spider-Man 2. We're kind of like catching up. Peter is in college, still being picked on. What I like about this though is the two dorks that are picking on him look dorkier than he is. Like who are these people that are picking up Peter Parker?
Well, and like, dude, you're spending like $45,000 a year to be here, and you're throwing spitballs. Like, grow up, man. Get the hell out of here. And it would have been fun to have that moment where it's like, if you're a bully in college, you're the loser.
Yes.
But no.
You're the one that has the problem. We also get our first look at Bryce Dallas Howard as Gwen Stacy, who beats Peter to answering a question in class.
Great idea. She's inspired casting. Good choice.
And it's interesting too. We've talked about how like Mary Jane in Spider-Man 1 picked up some Gwen Stacy traits. It's interesting how Gwen Stacy also picked up some later Mary Jane. It's weird how those characters are amalgamated in these movies.
Totally. I feel bad because poor Bryce Dallas Howard, I feel like she and I have similar taste in movies because she really wanted to be in a bunch of movies, and she's unfortunately in the worst ones of them. Like, she is in a terrible Terminator sequel. She's in a terrible Spider-Man sequel.
Terminator
She's John Connor's wife in Terminator Salvation.
Oh, damn. That movie is erased from my brain.
Yeah. It's better than Genesis, but,
but hey,
that's not saying much.
Exactly.
She's also in, and she's in the Jurassic Park sequels. And it's like...
Yes, she is. She's also in The Village.
She's great in The Village.
She's great in that movie.
Yeah, she is good in that movie.
She is good in that movie. Anyway, we Bryce Dallas Howard is Gwen Stacy. Peter is going to Mary Jane at a Broadway show. She's on Broadway. She comes down singing in what sounds not like, I don't know if Kirsten Dunst can sing or not, but I was like, that doesn't sound like her.
Yeah, this is the first point of contention for me. The first when I went, what? So the movie has established, the lore is established. Mary Jane is an actor.
Yes.
She's in I don't know if it's off Broadway, but she's in a like full production in Spider-Man 2, acting in dramas. Then, to signify she's made it, she's in this crappy musical on Broadway where she wears a dress and sings. And then later she'll punctuate this by being like, all I ever want to do is stand on stage and sing. And I'm like, that's new. Yeah. You made that up. That's not what you've established. She's an actor. And now all of a sudden she's basing her self-value on singing. You can't just generate that. You can't just make that up and expect us to forget that her whole motivation has been an actor.
Yes. And I think you bring that up, and I feel like there's a huge push in this movie to incorporate jazz for some reason. And I feel like it's maybe to accommodate that. Listen, I think maybe Sam Raimi was going through a phase. It's the early aughts. Swing dancing was kind of making a comeback. Maybe it's all, I don't know. But it pops up in weird places. So
here's the thing. Just really quick, I want to say, I wonder if, because this is the beginning where I'm like, is Sam Raimi deliberately sabotaging the movie?
Why would he deliberately sabotage it, though?
Right, because it's $1 million affair. It's your name on the budget. Like, what are you doing? But it's bad, and the decisions are weird, and they're not weird like funny. Sam Raimi makes weird decisions, like Drag Me to Hell, Army of Darkness. Like, he makes weird decisions, but they're delightful and they're quirky and they service the story or the narrative he's constructing. This, he's just like, how about jazz? How about this how about this weird thing? Like, you could tell he's under duress.
See for me, my interpretation is, watching this, I know a lot of times when we talk about this movie, it's like, oh, he shouldn't have done Venom. He didn't care about Venom.
Right.
And I will say Venom is incorporated in a lot of the worst parts of this movie. However, there's part of me that thinks like, oh, I feel like this movie was always going to be a disappointment because you can't, the more success you get, like, well, let's try this. Well, like, now there's a sense we can get away with basically anything.
Right.
And so it's like, I'm into jazz right now. Let's incorporate that. And it's like, and you don't know how to be like, well, no, stop.
Right, but like that doesn't work at all. It's weird because you could see like when Sam Raimi like gets his druthers in Spider-Man 2, he makes a full-blown horror movie for Doc Ock's arms.
Yeah.
You'd think, okay, well, maybe he'll put Morbius in this movie and make it a horror movie that's just weird. But instead he's just like, Sandman, one of the least offensive and scary villains of all time, and Venom because Avi Arad. And that's it.
And like, maybe that's the thing. Maybe maybe it's Avi Arad that was big into jazz, and like, I need two things. I need Venom and I need jazz. That's what we're doing.
We're not getting those two things.
That's what the kids are into right now.
Yeah. So
he's at the Broadway show. Harry is also at the Broadway show, which is a pretty good transition. We see up he's in the balcony. So Peter runs into Harry outside, and this is a great exchange. Peter wants to talk to him, and Harry's like, tell it to my father, raise him from the dead. And it's like, okay.
Oof. Yeah, dramatic. Plus, like, you mean to tell me, because there's some time has passed between the last movie and this movie.
Yes.
This is the first time you're interacting with him?
Yeah, you didn't like give him a call, like you didn't like, because that's the question I have. We know between Spider-Man's 1 and 2, between Uncle Ben's death and the beginning of Spider-Man 2, there's been 2 years,
right?
Assuming that roughly a year passes in Spider-Man 1.
Yeah,
this is where I start questioning, like, because you're right. What, you didn't try and talk to Harry? Like, how much time has passed between the end of Spider-Man 2 and right this second?
Yeah,
because then there's talk about like. Peter's been working at the Daily Bugle for years.
Yeah.
And so it's like, how many though? Like 2 years? Because whatever. Yeah, I have questions about how much time has passed. Peter goes back to backstage with MJ to see MJ, and she's got like a huge bouquet from Harry, and she's like, "What's up with you guys?" And Peter's like, "It's complicated," and it's like, "Oh my God, why didn't you tell her, you idiot?"
Don't you realize, like, and it's so frustrating because like the don't tell Harry thing. Everyone says don't tell Harry. Yeah. Mary Jane says it to Peter. Norman says it to Peter. Like, everyone's telling Peter, don't tell Harry. And the whole damn second movie is the importance of being earnest. It's the importance of being honest and being forthcoming and trusting those around you. And then Harry finds out, and it's like the cat's out of the bag finally, and the cat's out of the bag for Harry and for Mary Jane. That's a whole damn narrative. And then in the third one, he's like, I'm gonna lie to Mary Jane about this.
Yeah. I'm gonna hand wave it. We'll deal with it later. And I've got to admit, right this second, I was this years old when I realized I always thought the importance of being earnest was like the dude's name was Ernest. I didn't realize
it is,
Ernest.
But like
I didn't make the connection of earnest, the phrase being earnest. I literally just made that connection right now.
Oh, okay.
Yay me!
No, yeah.
The thing I do like about the sequence is Peter starts talking about like sound waves in the theater, and it's cool how much like MJ's into it. Like it's a good example of like, and this is the stuff that I think this movie. It's hard for me to hate this movie because on a certain level it does understand it still understands its character relationships, and it's still invested in that, and so it's like I know why MJ likes Peter Parker.
I think I like it. I think I know better now than I did then.
Yeah.
Also, is it time to say that Kirsten Dunst is doing a great job in this movie? Like, I think she's actually doing better than usual.
Yeah, I think and it's interesting too. Kirsten Dunst is amazing in this movie, and I think we've talked about she's amazing in all three. Yeah. Yes. When we just dropped the first episode as kind of a preview of the show, and somebody on Spotify you can answer questions, and somebody was like, "Oh, MJ's my favorite part of the first Spider-Man movie," and I think it's one of those like. And it's interesting too because Kirsten Dunst has gone on to do some really. She was in Fargo season 2. She's gone on to do like really interesting things.
Yeah.
But no, she is really good in this movie, and I actually think Tobey Maguire gets some of his series best moments in this movie. He also gets some of his series worst, if we're going to be candid. But
yeah,
there's a few moments where he's like reacting to something that's like, oh, this is interesting. Like this is compelling. Right. And I don't know what James Franco's doing in this movie, but we're not there yet.
Well, this is like, oh, that's really like because I can imagine a lot of people seeing these movies because when I first saw this movie, nobody knew who James Franco was because nobody watched Freaks and Geeks, right? Because that was the first thing everyone got him from, and then Spider-Man, and it's like you didn't know that James Franco was James Franco.
Yes,
and if you are watching this movie now or maybe 5 years ago, you're like, wow, James Franco is really subdued in these movies, and this one is just like, oh. James Franco and like Sam Raimi are friends, so Sam's like, I'm not directing you. Just mess around. Yeah. You be you. Be you for real. He has Tommy Wiseau face in this movie, and it's like he has a moment where he's looking at him in the coffee shop, and he has that lazy eye like Tommy Wiseau does, and I'm like, oh my god,
this is where it began.
This is where it begins.
This is James Franco as Tommy Wiseau begins.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, he's going full tilt.
Yeah, it's just all over the place, which also gets to probably my least favorite subplot in the movie, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So Harry transforms himself in the Goblin Cave, and as he's like, we're panning through the cave to get to him in the green tank just to know that he has the same powers. But we go from Willem Dafoe's dope ass glider to James Franco's stupid skateboard glider, and it's like, ow. Fuck, it fucking sucks.
Actually, there's like a metaphor for the whole movie where there's this gorgeous pan from the Goblin helmet to this weird silver helmet to the terrible paintball mask, where it's like, watch the diminishing returns of this franchise. Because he chooses the one. He looks like he's snowboarding. It's horrible.
I think. I don't know what the decision here was. I don't know why. Maybe it was one of those like, we've got two full-on villains in this movie. We've got to let Harry just be Harry, I guess.
Well, and we need Harry's suit to be nebulous about whether he's a hero or a villain because of his turn at the end. We also have heard the criticism of the Power Ranger helmet from the first movie.
So let's somehow make it worse.
Yes, but like, well, we won't do that. We won't do the helmet anymore.
Yeah. Well, so it'll just be slightly worse. Yeah. Anyway, and again, I feel like there's a missed opportunity and I don't know what the logistics of this will be in universe, but having Willem Dafoe, like, imagine if Green Goblin showed up with Willem Dafoe's voice, but we know it's Harry.
Yeah.
But like Peter doesn't know that, so it's like, is Norman back?
That would have been awesome. That's a great idea. What a wasted opportunity.
Anyway, and it's not like you couldn't get him back. He's back in this movie. He's been in all 3 movies.
Yeah.
So him and Cliff Robertson, they were going to show up in every one.
Yep.
So this is basically the sequence where we're getting all of our villains. We get Peter and MJ watching Shooting Stars on a web, and this is where she says her line, "I'd like to sing on stage for the rest of my life with you in the front row."
Yeah.
And this for me was my first. If it wasn't the skateboard glider, which we'd already known about, like they'd shown that in the trailers and everything. When the meteor just like lands beside, like just thumps like a yard away from them, no crater, it just lands, and that's our introduction to the symbiote. I was like, uh-oh.
Oh. Like, oh, you don't even care.
Yeah.
You're just like, he needs to have the symbiote. Now, okay, I hate the symbiote in this. I hate the idea of Venom. None of it works for me. But I love the theme.
Yes.
Of the symbiote.
Yes.
And I also, I don't know, like, the way that they film it, like, its animation, the use of it, and thematically, how it represents the darkness of Peter and selfishness, because for me, every character in this movie, every protagonist in this movie is incredibly selfish.
Yeah.
Like, everyone needs to learn a lesson. Everyone is selfish in this movie. And it's really weird, like, how selfish, except for Aunt May. But, like,
yes.
Harry, MJ, Peter, everyone is selfish. Everyone is thinking me, 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 me. And it's, like, really interesting to make a movie with no redeemable or with no sympathetic protagonists.
Well, and it's interesting too, because as we've talked about before, like, that kind of selfish streak has been a part of this Peter Parker from the jump.
Totally.
And I think it's a really, I think on paper, it's an interesting way to use the black suit, and it's an interesting place to take this character. And in some ways, it's a good way to, like, sum up the series to deal with this last, because it goes back to responsibility. I think you're right. It's one, and again, that's what makes me. It's what kind of makes this movie difficult for me, because certain core key things actually do work.
Yeah.
They're just hamstrung by, like,
there's
just hamstrung by things that are genuinely baffling. Like, well, why is this happening?
or just no one cares. Like, we're not, like, you're spending a lot of time on something that, like, no one cares about.
Well, and I also think, me in particular, we praised the efficiency of the first Spider-Man, the way it's like, here's this beat, here's this beat, here's this beat. And this is where it kind of, like, turns against you, where it's like, this is efficient, but I don't know that it's good. Like, I don't know. I don't know that it, like, works. Because
it's easy, and the symbiote doesn't need a whole backstory. You could have had John bring it back, or maybe, like, have a scene where, like, Substance X in a lab, and John,
exactly.
It's clanking. You have a terrible Raimi extra go, like, what's up with Substance X? And like, oh, that's the stuff that John Jameson brought back from his last mission, remember? And then and then it escapes. I don't know.
Or say, like, and here's the other thing, and I don't know that this would have flown at the time. Something I like about the Spider-Man movies is the fidelity they have to the comics. I think this was the time where you could have been like, hey, we need to switch things up. Right. Like, you could have had it. You could have gone the Ultimate. I don't know if Ultimate Venom had shown up by the time this comes out, or it's not.
I think it did.
It's not from space. It's just a lab thing.
I love that.
I think you could have also done the setup of, like, okay, Harry knows Peter's Spider-Man, and so now he's going to orchestrate things. He's basically going to do what Norman Osborn does in Spectacular Spider-Man, where he's like, I'm going to create villains to throw at Peter.
Yes.
There's ways to make it work. Honestly, I feel like, knowing what we know now and the way superhero franchises now, it's kind of a bummer. Literally, next year, this movie came out in 2007. A year from this movie, we get Iron Man and The Dark Knight.
Oh.
Which will dictate the future of the Spider-Man franchise to today.
Yeah, and also, like, but what a dunk, by the way. You're watching Spider-Man 3, you're like, oh, I don't know about that. And then you see Iron Man, you're like, and then you watch Spider-Man 3 again, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like a finger painting.
It's a bummer that those didn't come out now, because I think, I don't know, we had the Lord of the Rings movie, because I feel like, but see, I'm a Venom fan.
Yes.
So if I was Avi Arad, right?
Yeah.
if he came to me and was like, we need Venom, I'm like, cool, well, then I'm filming Spider-Man 3 and 4 back to back.
Right.
And you'll get Venom in Spider-Man 4, and I'll set it up in Spider-Man 3, and then I'll do a couple other Silver Age villains. Like, I'll have Harry create villains, so I'll do a couple other Silver Age villains.
Vulture, Sandman, Mysterio, just throw them all out there.
Because there's a lot of them that Spider-Man villains are great, but they're not necessarily deep. So you could
Scorpion.
You could just like shoot a couple out there, maybe sneak in your Sinister Six while you're building up Venom. You know what I mean? Like that's how I would have pitched it to Avi. It's like, okay, you want Venom, you need to give me 2 movies and I'll make Venom happen for you.
Totally.
Anyway.
And you'll get a ton of action figures between that because we're going to have Electro and Sandman and Vulture and it's like Kraven the Hunter. Like, and you would have the joy of getting Sam Raimi's favorite actors or some like fun stunt casting. Like, who wouldn't have loved to have seen like Ben Kingsley as the Vulture or, you know, just any or Bruce Campbell as a Mysterio, like the deleted scene suggests that we were gonna get.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and you could have even if you didn't want to do all those villains, like there's a very simple through line of Harry knows Peter's Spider-Man, so he hires Kraven the Hunter to go after them, and now you have your movie. And
plus,
one of Kraven's most popular storylines is him dealing with Black Suit Spider-Man.
Yes. Plus, I think one of the first times that Spider-Man and Kraven interacted, he was hunting Spider-Man and he hunted Harry Osborn. So you got the Harry Osborn link there.
It's all
not
there.
The same thing, but it's all there. It's all laid out in front of you. But I mean, you know, it's 2007. You want to make Oz the Great and Powerful. I get it. You just want to get out.
And also, to be fair, like, you know, with the shows we do, it is easy to armchair quarterback this shit. We're not dealing with studio demands or budgets or any of that bullshit. Like, and we live in the future and we know where superhero movies were going, so we can whatever. Sam Raimi doesn't know any of that. So he just has the Venom rock just fall from the sky.
And jump on the motorcycle, which I think sucks. Like, Peter should not. The motorcycle in the first or in the second movie represents Peter's unwillingness to blend his universes to make Spider-Man and Peter Parker work. Making Mary Jane sit on the back of that crappy letting a smoke show like that ride your janky ass ride in her dumb helmet is when you were just in a web. Like, swing out of there.
That's the other thing that I find kind of baffling living in the future watching this movie is again, that dedication to fidelity. Like, do we need Eddie Brock? We already have Harry and John Jameson, people that Peter's ruined their lives. They hate Peter. That could be your Venom. Like, they could just be, especially since John Jameson's we've established he's an astronaut.
Right.
So there's a quick link to, like, I think I would have also been tempted, like, have Eddie, but have him be like a red herring. Like, it ends up not being Eddie.
Oh, that would have been very unpopular. I gotta tell you right now.
The other thing is like now maybe you could get away with that stuff. Yeah. But like then you couldn't. So we also get our first introduction to Flint Marko as he's running from the cops in the middle of the street. He breaks into his daughter's room. I have some confusions about what his daughter's dealing with because she has an oxygen tank when she gets in there, and then later she has a crutch, and it's like,
she's Tiny Tim. She has that disease. You know, the one that money fixes. And
yes, the money fixing, the disease, the money fixing disease. I just thought of that episode of South Park where they fix AIDS by literally injecting money into people.
Just inject money into her, she'll be better.
He's carrying a bunch of letters from her. He grabs his iconic shirt, which why?
I love that.
I love the shirt. I'm just like, why is that? Is that your favorite shirt? Did she give you that shirt?
He sees, he's like, perfect. He doesn't even say anything, but you could tell from his body language, like, got it, my Sandman costume.
This is the one. His ex-wife shows up for exposition to basically yell at him about all the stuff we need to know about his backstory.
Yep.
And the daughter shows up and gives him a locket with her picture in it because apparently it's the 30s. And,
I know.
And then he leaves and he says, "I'm not a bad person. I've just had some bad luck." Which, boy, howdy, we're going to get into his bad. He does have some bad luck.
Yeah. I love that because I hate it. Like, I hate his. Poor Thomas Hayden Church. Like, he's an actor and he's just like he's just the whole movie.
He delivers most of his lines like he's a robot.
Right. And he makes these really weird, like, grimacing faces. I'm just kind of like, what is this choice? Because it's clearly deliberate because you're a real actor. But his "I'm not a bad person, I've just had some bad luck" great line in a Spider-Man movie when the mantra is "with great power comes great responsibility," right? Because it's him refusing to acknowledge that he is the master of his own destiny.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea. It's never paid off or anything, but and it's kind of ironic that a person says, I'm not a bad person. I've also murdered a man, and I steal from people, and I broke out of jail, but like I'm not a bad person who murders the with great power comes great responsibility person. I think that's kind of fun, but also that only works as an idea we're talking about and not as a sequence or element in this movie. And that's the thing. This movie is just that.
Yeah, and it goes back to there's a lot of this. I think one of the flaws in this movie is a lot of things just happen. Like the meteor falling down. Whereas like Doc Ock and Green Goblin, their creation was a direct result of their own hubris.
Yes.
Sandman really does just this movie takes this line at face value. Sandman just has bad luck.
Yeah, he does. Oh, he is a victim of everyone else's complete apathy.
Yes.
I cite the How It Should Have Ended animated guys who just have that. That's the all I could think of is just that moment where he falls into the sand machine.
Yes.
And then they go, oh, there's something on the thing. It's probably a bird. Here's a bright idea. Why don't you check it out before you use your late night highly experimental science fiction sand experiments.
Well, and also, it's like you clearly have the technology to know the mass is changing in there, but because it's got to be big. What birds are going?
A bird?
That sequence opens, and we're getting ahead of ourselves. But that sequence opens with somebody coming to Captain Stacy, where they're like, we've chased him. James Cromwell's Captain Stacy. We've chased Marco into the marshlands, which I was like, marshland? You live in that area with marshlands?
I think they're like trying to suggest like it's like the Meadowlands, but even then, like he wouldn't have far to go, and they don't have like secret late night experimental testing facilities
out there. And I was also worried about kind of like weirded out by the timeline of that. Like they tell Captain Stacy that while they're still chasing. I was like, how did that information get back? If I guess talkies or whatever. I don't know.
I guess.
So Peter, the next scene we get is Peter visits Aunt May. When he talks about wanting to marry Mary Jane.
Yes.
I love this sequence.
Okay.
I genuinely love this sequence. And it's something that we just don't get in MCU movies, where we get a second for characters to breathe, because Aunt May talks about, she says a man has to be understanding and has to put his wife before himself. And then she tells the story about how Uncle Ben proposed to her. They go out to an island and he proposes to her, and it's just there to let us. It builds out Aunt May's backstory, builds out Uncle Ben's backstory, and it's another moment for these movies to be like, hey, this person exists outside of Peter's orbit. She's had a life. She's done things. It's not just purely plot functional. It lets this. It's one of the few moments in this movie, but something I think these Sam Raimi movies have done well, of letting characters breathe a little bit.
Yes. This scene does a great job of setting things up and putting Peter in a position of, vulnerability. And he, we set up the ring and the red herring, because the ring has a lot of sentimentality. Like there's meaning behind it. It's not just the representative of him wanting to marry Mary Jane, but it's also representative of the love that Aunt May had for Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
Uncle Ben had for her. She's giving it to him. It's her love for Peter. She's sacrificing this one. You get the impression, because she lost her house. She moved into this apartment. She got some stuff, but Henry Jackson didn't pack it all up, and I get the feeling that like this is the last thing of Uncle Ben I have, and I'm giving it to you. Don't drop it in a goblin fight.
Whatever you do, which is a great way to add stakes to that fight.
Totally. No, that sequence is brilliant because you have that scene.
Yes,
they do drop the ball, and here's how. Aunt May says, to basically like make sure that the proposal is memorable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure whatever you do, but she sets it up. Like she sets up this thing where it's like, it's going to be memorable. And then we get this great scene with the ring, and no one really does anything with that. The proposal, we have what Peter thinks is a memorable proposal, but is really so cliche that the snooty waiter remembers, like he knows it all beat by beat before he even really tells him what to do. But then it never gets paid off, and then it's dropped. Like it's dropped like a wet thud when the ring comes back, and it's just like here's just a quick pitch where it's like the proposal should have been the same thing where it fails at the restaurant.
Yeah.
And then Mary Jane is a victim and a kidnapper. She's kidnapped again, right? As she always is.
Yeah.
But they're both so done with it by this point that it's like high flying and like, he's like they're over it. And they're still doing their back flipping and stuff like that. And he's like, but they talk during the scene, and he's like, listen. Will you marry me? Like, and he pulls out the ring. Like, have the proposal be memorable because it's a Spider-Man fight that she's like intrinsically connected to. It's like it's not what Aunt May planned on or expected, but it's what's perfect for a Spider-Man movie, and not just you're dumping me. Well, I was going to propose to you. Like that sucks.
Anyway. I do like the subversion there, but we'll get into that a minute. After this ring sequence, we get another. This is where like when I'm watching this movie, there's moments of like, wait, do I actually like this movie?
Yeah.
And this is one of this Goblin fight. I actually think really other than his shitty costume. The fight itself is dynamic and interesting. Harry shows up, grabs Peter. And what's also interesting about this is neither of them are really in costume. I know technically Harry is, but his costume's not a costume.
It's not a costume.
Yeah. His mask does that stupid, I hate it in the Iron Man movies where it just like folds back and then like vanishes. Like where did it? Anyway, whatever. And so they're just, and again, like Harry's handing Peter his fucking ass. Like he's throwing, one of my favorite is when he throws him in a building and Peter goes in one window and out the other. And of course we talked about, he's trying to keep the ring the whole time, and we get some cool callbacks. Harry uses the razor bats, and Peter's like, "I hate that stuff. I hate these things."
Fun stuff.
It's just cool. I just really, and I think it's aged really well. It's not like the CG, and it's not seamless, but it's not seamless in the ways if like when you watch like old Ray Harryhausen stop motion, where it's still like cool. Like it's not like I believe like. I'm not transported there, but it's like dope. It's like cool, you know?
Yeah, that scene's not going to make new filmmakers, but it is still a fun scene to watch today.
And I will say, we get a little bit, to go back to our earlier conversation about the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer.
Yeah.
There's, in the way Sam Raimi stages these action scenes, and it's been true of all three of these movies, there's a weight to them that doesn't exist anymore.
Oh yeah,
like it's like Peter's doing cool stuff in the trailer, but I kind of don't like. I'm not able to connect with. Whereas this is like I feel it. Like oh my god, like he's getting his ass beat. Like this is a fight.
yeah. It's because Spider-Man's fights tend to be like in the air, balletic.
Yeah,
this is balletic, but also like. It's a street fight, but because it's Spider-Man and goblins, it can be in the air.
Yeah. It can be in the air, and boy, is it! Peter trips Harry with a web line. And again, the other thing I like about all these fights, and going back to the first one, is Peter having to use his brain. Like he distracts Harry with one of the bombs, and then he uses the web line, and Harry hits his head on every surface on the way down.
He eats shit. That dude it is dead.
Yeah, well, I mean, he goes down and Peter's trying to like bring him back, and he's not able to, so he takes him to the hospital. And this is where we get to when I was first watching it, my second feeling is like he's got short-term amnesia. I'm like, what?
Now that's a staple. That's a Goblin thing. Like in all the comic books, Gobby finds out, he gets amnesia, and then he loses it. And it's like you need to have the amnesia thing, but when you see it on screen, it's just daytime soapish.
Yeah, it is.
It just doesn't work.
It is totally daytime soapish. And also the way he gets the amnesia and the way it comes back makes you feel like, did we need to bother with any of this? Did we need
to... No, it would have been better if he pretended to have amnesia.
Or pretended to be dead, or maybe have just waited later in the movie to be like, haha, I'm evil now. I don't, you know what I mean?
Well, because why does he jump into the Goblin formula machine then? Like, why didn't he do that when he found out and discovered the Goblin lair? Like, when he shows up at the end of Spider-Man 2, like the doors to the Goblin serum machine open for him.
Mm-hmm. It's like, come here,
come on, and then he's like, I'm gonna wait however long it is between Spider-Man 2 and 3 to do it.
And that's the question: how long was that? Long enough for Mary Jane to get cast in a Broadway show,
right?
Whatever that means.
Long enough for her to alter her personal dreams and hopes into and modify them from acting to singing.
Listen, you know, you go with where the money is. She got cast on Broadway as a singer. That's her thing now. So that's her thing.
Well, until she isn't anymore. And then what's your excuse?
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that where there's like one show where the reviews are like, and then immediately she's out, which I feel like Spider-Man Turn of the Dark had a longer run than that, but whatever. I don't
sure
know.
did. Oh yeah.
I don't know Broadway. I don't know Broadway politics.
That's fine.
So after this, we get to the scene we were talking about earlier, where Sandman is they think he's a bird, and they nuke his ass. We get another classic from the first movie zoom in molecular transformation thing that either
his DNA turns to sand.
Turns to sand. And listen, this is not this movie's problem. It's from the comics as well. But as an adult, I do wonder how does Sandman work? Like, how does his consciousness? Like, you think that at least the brain should still be there, and then it's psychically controlling the sand, but that dude's just sand now.
Okay, really very, very basic. In the comics, Dan Slott suggested that there's Sandman does not have a skeletal structure or a brain anymore. His consciousness is all pretty much there's a grain of sand that is his soul or whatever.
Yeah.
And it is like the sand prime, and he takes outside existing sand around it to constitute a body. But he has basically been distilled into one grain of sand. He's just this one thing now.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
It's a disaster.
Listen, sure. We're dealing in a world with a guy that can climb walls with tiny hairs on his hand. I'm not going to nitpick this shit. Because here's the thing. This is another thing that does work in this movie. Sandman fucking looks cool, and they do cool things with the ability. It's fucking cool. And I will say, part of me, Dylan Baker's in this movie too. Part of me is could we have done the lizard? But the problem with that is then we just have another mad scientist whose experiment goes wrong. Although you talk about people changing their goals, Dylan Baker has a line in this that I was like, what? But anyway. We get to the I think probably if there is an iconic scene from this movie, it is Sandman reconstituting himself. And I think
it's great.
It goes back to, it's the same reason why the Doc Ock, the arm sequence works in spirit, in that Sam Raimi nails us B-movie horror monster creation. That's what this is. Yeah, we're doing teleported right back to the 1930s, like classic Frankenstein and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where it's the monster being born, but there's a 3-act structure to it. There's an emotionality to it when he finds the locket, and that's what motivates him to reconstitute himself. It works. And also, if I'm being honest, some of the Sandman CG at the end of the movie, it hasn't aged great. This actually still looks really good.
It does look really good, and because it's sand, it's tough, and I'm sure they had to develop a brand new whole technology to make it work and everything. But from the score, which is very, like you said, actually it's a great observation, is that the score evokes this kind of horror, kind of classic 30s cinema, monster movie theme. But it's also kind of hopeful and beautiful. It's a really great theme that without it doesn't quite work. I still think it looks great. I don't care about Sandman. I think it was a horrible choice. There's no reason for him to be in there. You could have just had the lizard in the opening. There would have been Lizard and Venom. Sandman should not be in this movie. Because you have to change his origin to make him work or make anyone care. It's just it feels really tacked on, and that's in a movie where Venom is tacked onto this movie.
It was interesting. I feel the impression I get watching these movies, again, is we know Aviara had pushed for Venom, and I feel okay, well, I need you, Venom. It's funny. Venom. The struggles with Venom remind me a lot of the X-Men struggles with the Phoenix Saga, where it's they keep wanting to do it, but they're called sagas for a reason. You can't just if you're going to do the story, there's steps to it. You can't just do it.
Yeah. You can't just jump in. You can't just make a Justice League movie. You have to make movies that build towards it.
So, to take the time to set that up, I wonder if it was okay, well, we need another villain. Well, I can do cool things with Sandman, so we'll just have. But Sandman also doesn't require a lot. It's not he doesn't have a deep origin.
No, he doesn't, and we can do fun things with him. We can have the cool visuals, but also don't have to waste screen time developing his character, because they don't.
They do not.
I will say that I remember during development of Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire saying on record multiple times that he thought Sandman was a cool villain and would love to see Sandman.
Yeah.
I wonder if, because Tobey Maguire has it's debatable as to whether he wanted to be in these movies anymore, how much play he had. I know he was paid an obscene amount of money to be in them.
Yes.
But did he care enough to say Sandman has to be in the third movie? I don't know, but I do remember that the only person I know who was involved in the production at all that said anything about Sandman was Tobey Maguire.
Yeah.
So I wonder if, clearly we're building towards Lizard. I feel so bad for Dylan Baker. Good for him. Good on him for being in the damn thing. Because if I was hey, I want you to be in this movie again, you're not going to be the Lizard.
Yeah.
But you'll still be in it. I'd be like, nah.
I'm good, thanks.
Right?
And as we'll get to in a minute, we straight up spiked the ball on the Lizard happening in this franchise at all.
Yeah.
After this, MJ visits Peter in his shitty apartment. He's still in that shitty apartment, and she's talking about how the reviews are bad. It's one of them is her small voice didn't carry past the first row.
Yes.
And Peter kind of goes on a thing where listen, Spider-Man gets attacked all the time. I know what you're going through. And MJ straight up goes, "This isn't about you." And it's like,
yes.
Yeah, dude. And also it's weird. I know things are going well for you, man, but did you forget that you pouted for 2 whole movies?
Am I not supposed to get what I want?
Yeah, if anybody you should be able to give people room to be sad about stuff.
Right. No. That's for when she says it's not about you. I was like, everyone in this movie is really selfish. Mm-hmm. Everyone is it's not about you. Everyone says that. Harry says that. Peter says that. Everyone is no.
Yeah.
Just doesn't anybody care about me? And also, it's frustrating because this is the movie where it's what if Peter got what he wanted? He has the girl, and people love Spider-Man. He'd be a tremendous asshole.
Yeah, he would suck. There's a reason the universe keeps dunking on Peter.
Right, it's because if he gets an inch, he'll take a mile. What? That's not a hero. You're not a hero if circumstances keep you from being successful. Being a hero is choosing to do the right thing.
Well, and again, that's the lesson we learn. And I think that again on paper, that's cool. That's great. And that's something that this Peter kind of needs. And I think it's compelling. It's more compelling than just Peter's a good guy and he's a good guy all the time. And it's because that's not how people work. You know what I mean?
No.
It's buried under other confusing stuff. And it is tough. I will say it is kind of tough how much of a tool Peter is in this movie. Because in this moment, before I gloss over this, this is another solid moment of characterization that again is why I think even this being the weaker of the Sam Raimi movies, the Raimi movies will always be the top of the heap of the live action ones for me. MJ says, I read those words and it's like my father wrote them.
Hey,
damn
good stuff.
And that means something to us as an audience because in movie 1 we saw Dad and he wasn't great, and we hear about him asking for money in 2, and so we know what that means to her. And I think it's great that's I care about Mary Jane and what she wants in her history as much as I care about Peter, which I think is important. And then police sirens go and Peter tries to coax a go get him tiger out of MJ, and it's oh, fuck you, dude. Fuck you.
What? That's rough, especially when she gave you such an easy layup for comfort.
Yes.
I tell you what I'm actually, you don't have to guess or figure it out or suss out what exactly I'm upset about. I told you. I'm upset about my dad. I need a strong, male, positive figure in my life to affirm my feelings. Goodbye.
Yeah, just for 1 second, think about what Uncle Ben would say in this situation and say that. Say whatever that is.
Say that.
And
never.
Say whatever that is. And this is the moment where I'm reminded a little bit of oh yeah, Peter. This is Peter's first relationship. Right. Is that what we're led to believe?
Never been with anybody. Ugh.
And it's even tougher where it's college, that's fine, but at this point where it's 2007, so Tobey Maguire's got to be in his 30s, and it's which hey, listen, for anybody starting relationships in 30s, nothing wrong with that, but try to pick up the other tools you need to function in those relationships prior.
Exactly.
Read a book.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah. Take criticism.
So again, we go back to the fact that in the previous movies we've established New York is a fucking hellscape in these movies because there's a crane going out of control. This crane does as much damage as any supervillain in any of these movies.
Yeah, my God.
It is fucking up buildings, and in one of those buildings, because again there are no coincidences, except in Spider-Man 3, where there are a ton of them. Gwen Stacy is in there, and she's a model in these movies?
Gwen Stacy's a model, and also a brilliant science student.
Sure.
And the daughter of a police captain.
Fine. It reminds me of when I love Spider-Man Miles Morales, the video game. I think it's a fucking great game. I actually think I might enjoy it more than Spider-Man PS4. It's great, but it is weird how like is every high schooler in New York just a super genius? Like is all the every like, and then they all happen to get bitten by spiders? Like how is this happening? Anyway,
I don't know.
So she's a model, cranes fucking stuff up. This is where we Topher Grace as Eddie Brock, and like a lot of this movie, I get what we're doing on paper. We're saying, what would evil Peter Parker look like?
That's it. It's evil Peter Parker.
The problem with that is, for a bulk of this movie, Peter's acting like evil Peter Parker.
Right. Like, we don't need another evil Peter Parker. The evil Peter Parker is Peter Parker. Like, Peter Parker is a douche in this whole movie. We don't need another guy to be more of a douche.
Yeah. It'd be good to have a good contrast of like, listen, Peter's not acting great right now, but at least he's not this guy. Anyway.
Yeah, but like he is also selfish, and he's one of those people who's like, it's all about me. Why not me? He's asking God to kill people. Like he's the embodiment of selfishness. He's like it's like he's like this barometer or this lightning rod to like he's the avatar of selfishness. Of selfishness.
He straight up looks at Jesus on the cross and looks at that and says, "Hey, you get off that cross and murder this guy I hate."
Right, and like for what reason? Because he called him out. And by the way, we'll get there. But like, no, Eddie sucks. And also like the whole, I'm Eddie Brock and I'm dating your daughter. And then it's like, he's not.
Oh yeah, that's actually, I actually think that's an interesting choice. That Eddie's a psycho. Like Eddie's not. Right. Eddie's like, even before the symbiote, he is like 2 steps away from serial killer. Like he might have some small animals buried somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, because he's like, I'm going to ingratiate myself with this girl that I like or know, and her father, and say, like, just make leaps. Don't ever, no. It's really weird.
There's also, like, and this also goes to a lot of the contrivances in this movie of, like, how is this crane with Gwen Stacy, but Gwen knows Eddie, and it's, like, it's just a lot of, like, hand-waving of stuff. So anyway,
the rescue sequence is spectacular.
The rescue sequence is great as he's jumping from debris and he grabs Gwen Stacy. It's rad. It's really
They're
cool.
Playing with sound. It's clearly they watched Attack of the Clones and they were like, "Oh, I like that scene with the seismic charges where things where things go silent and then there's a big loud sound." Like the heartbeat throughout that sequence.
Yep.
And like the kind of like tone. Good stuff.
It's good. Really I think all the action for the most part, all the action sequences in this movie are really solid.
Sandman fight, it's all good.
So now we get. I do also like the touch that after Peter saves Gwen, his first thought is to get a picture of Spider-Man, and then he's like, "Oh, Gwen, are you okay?" Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
So we cut to the Daily Bugle, and J. Jonah Jameson is in a pitch meeting there, and like it's this comedic sequence where like the buzzer on his desk shakes his entire desk, and again, it's stuff like this where I feel like, I feel like Spider-Man 3 was always going to be bad. I feel like because it feels indulgent in moments. And this is one of those, like, we love J.K. Simmons, we love J. Jonah Jameson, but this is a bit much.
No, I remember in the theater, I'm hating this movie already. Yeah. I'm like, this movie sucks, but thank God, because J. Jonah Jameson is here to save the day.
Yeah.
And that scene isn't very good, and it's like you said, it's very self-indulgent, it's over the top. I like the idea that, like, after spending so much money on the wedding, he now needs to take medication. Like, without being said, it's just like, I'm having a hard time. He's, the whole, him trying to, like, dial it back is interesting, and it's in the Daily Bugle where I noticed, and I think it's across the board, there's a color palette to this movie. Did you notice? I know you're in film. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The movie is a little darker and a little more blue. Like there's a weird like tone to this movie the color palette is different in this movie than the last two. Yeah. It looks different. And the Daily Bugle is a different set. Like they built a different Daily Bugle. Like the geometry of everything is all off. Yeah. Where everything is, where Betty's desk is versus J. Jonah Jameson's desk. Like everything's different. And it's like, you're in this space. It's like a dream where you're like, I know that I'm supposed to be in my childhood home, but it looks completely different, but I know it's what I'm supposed to be. That's what this is, where you're like, I'm in the Daily Bugle, but like something's wrong.
Something's off.
Yeah, and this whole movie is everything's off. J. Jonah Jameson, he's hilarious. I know this, and I like him because he's over the top, but there's something wrong with how this is constructed. His all the jokes he makes, the observations, that like buzzer that shakes the whole desk, like none of it really works or hits, and it should, because on paper, like you say, it does. You know,
it's one of those where you can see what we're doing, like what we're going for, and it just never quite gels. But no. You're right, it is disorienting being in this different, but just again that dream sense, because it's not obviously
totally wrong.
Yeah, it's just slightly off. And of course we get Eddie comes in and everybody is commenting on his cologne, in case we were wondering whether he was a douchebag. He is.
Right, thank you.
And
it's bad enough he's it's bad enough he's a jerk. He has to smell too.
He has to have an odor. So they decide to take both Eddie and Peter are competing to sell photos to Jameson, and I guess we've got a staff position open, and Jonah offers to them, like, whoever can get me a photo of Spider-Man causing trouble, like actually doing some crime, gets the staff position.
Yes. I loved that, by the way.
Yeah.
For me, I was like, this is awesome, because the stakes are so low, and like, this is Spider-Man. Like, this is Spider-Man, where it's like, I want health insurance. That's the plot.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
And him being like, you gotta, take a picture of Spider-Man with his hand in the cookie jar, and I love that. I was like, this is fun. They'd never make a movie like this today. Like, you can't make a Spider-Man movie where it's like he has a big homework assignment, or he's trying to get health insurance from getting a full-time job that he will never be able to keep in the first place. But
exactly, and it's you're right that we wouldn't do it now. And something I've liked about these movies is, and it really came to sharper focus at the end of this one, of how personal the final conflicts are. Like, theoretically, all of New York is in danger at the end of Spider-Man 2, but New York is not aware of that at the time.
No. And now, in the third one, all of New York is aware that no one but Spider-Man is in danger.
Yeah, exactly. No one but Spider-Man is in danger. And it's a big thing. And it's now like, and again, this is how I feel like this movie kind of presaged the future of Marvel movies in particular, where it's like everyone's got to be world-ending. It doesn't matter who the hero is. It's got to be world-ending stakes. Listen, I know Shang-Chi's dad is a big crime boss, but that's not big enough. We've got to get a soul-eating dragon up in here.
I know. Shang-Chi is a street-level hero. Why did you go? I mean, like, I like the mysticism, but like, come on.
Yeah,
the whole world.
I was really into that movie, but it takes a hard turn in the third act that I was not feeling. But listen, this isn't the Shang-Chi show. We're not. Don't get me started on that. That movie. Yeah. That movie hurt me.
That's totally fair.
Anyway, and then it does the same
staff
thing.
Job.
It does the same thing as this movie, where it's like, it kills off, like, listen, you might not have nailed the villain this time, but we'll get it next time. And then they kill him. It's like,
now let's kill him anyway.
What are we doing? Anyway, so they're going for the staff job, and this is they're going to have to compete for it, and that's and kind of like the Ring. It's something that's dropped until late. We just forget about it until later in the movie.
Yeah. By the way, we do get resolution as to who gets the staff job, and then it's never paid off.
Yes, that is
like,
true.
They never do anything with it again.
Yeah. And it's also weird that, like, this is like one of two scenes we really get with Jonah.
Yeah.
And it's like, that should have been a sign that, like, maybe we were doing too much. We need to spend more time with, and it just, again, I think this whole thing, we're going to be like, you could have done this. And it's like, yeah. You could have done Scorpion. And then we get all the Jonah we need, because it's his fault.
Yeah. No, Jonah, the next time we see Jonah, it's actually infinitely more disappointing than the last time we saw Jonah.
Yes. So we get our Stan Lee cameos, Peter standing out, and I guess it's like a video billboard. I never know what to call those. It's a video.
I don't know.
He's seeing,
yeah, it's just an ad.
Of Spider-Man, which it is a little. I like that things are better. I like the idea of what if Spider-Man was getting everything he wanted. It's a bit much in this movie.
Yes.
And Stan Lee says, I guess one person can make a difference. Enough said. And it's like everything else in this movie, where it just feels a bit. It's like, forced.
What? Not only is it forced, but like, what difference did he make? Like, just
again, he saved the entire city.
Yeah,
in the last movie.
He is a human being. Like, it's it's one of those things where I don't know. I'm always pulled out whenever there's a scene where a hero that is like a regular person that can die, or at least like will die inevitably because they're a human being, is foisted on the shoulders of people, and they say like, we used to have bad crime and all this stuff, but now Spider-Man's here. I'm like, he's a dude. Like you can't have a Spider-Man policy in place. Like it has to be, you have to be in charge. You have to still have a fire department.
Yes. Yeah. It is like, especially when you're watching like Batman, it's like, what do the cops in Gotham City do? Like, what are they responsible for at this point?
Are they a cleanup crew now? Like, come on.
So Peter takes Harry home and gives him a basketball for whatever reason. They do talk about it, but it's still weird. Like these two dweebs are trying to play basketball with each other.
That basketball. He's like, the most unrealistic thing in this movie is that Peter Parker owns a basketball and his name's on it.
Yeah. Yep. And Harry asks if he has a girlfriend.
I like this scene. It's kind of cute. It's fun to see them actually be friends because we never see it.
Yeah, we got a little bit of it. The relationship was complicated at best in Spider-Man 1, and then of course it's even worse in Spider-Man 2. And again, anytime we can take some moment for characterization, I like it. And Peter throws the basketball, Harry misses it, but then he catches the ball and a vase that almost falls over, which is a little bit, it felt like a reminder of like the lunch tray scene in the first one. And it's a reminder that, that Goblin's still in there. He's still got those Goblin gifts. Mm-hmm. And then MJ finds out that she's been recast in the role. She goes to rehearsal, finds out she's been recast.
Great scene.
And like I said, I don't know how Broadway works, but it feels abrupt.
It is abrupt, but I love it. I love that scene. That felt real. Like that scene where he goes like, what is she still doing? Like, what is she doing here? Like that interaction, I was like, this is a real scene. Like someone wrote the scene because they were in this scene. And I'm like, and I'm all for it. I love that scene. I was like, ooh. They're just like, oh, hi, honey. Like, they're like, what does she do? Like, they're angry that they have to deal with this now.
Yeah.
And then they go up, hey. And then they said, we could say you got sick. Like, I was like, this is a real scene. Like, that's really, it felt very real. And
this might have actually happened to Kirsten Dunst at some point prior to this movie. And then the capper here, and I like this because it's a really great reversal of everything that happened in the first movie. MJ comes out to applause, and she thinks it's for her, and then it's Spider-Man going by.
Yeah.
And it's just that again, moments like this, it's like, oh, this works. Like this works. And so I know that it's not necessarily the biggest high point, but I think this is where we should break our episode. We should MJ's at a low point, Peter's at a high point. How the turntables. And that's going to be it for this episode of Spider-Man 3. Next week we'll get into more Sandman, more Venom, more new Goblin, more everything, more jazz. Oh, so much.
So much jazz.
So much jazz.
100% more jazz.
The real villain of Spider-Man 3 is jazz. But Sal, remind the kids at home where they can find you and what you're up to.
Come on by to youtube.com/comicpop and all of our ancillary channels and check us out. Otherwise, you can follow me on Twitter at Sal Says What and be here for more.
Boom. There it is. You can find me at DJ Talks Trash. If you're listening to this, you're probably already on the Patreon, but if you're not, go to patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. And we'll see you next time for more Spider-Man 3. Bye, everybody.